results with my own research, and I'm like, I didn't know that, you know. But I'm just really fascinated by this because I never tell anybody that I do things, but I do. And here are
Hmm.
correlating, not really correlating, but they're things that I have that are key to this showing up. How long have you known
Exactly.
this?
I started the study 2 years ago. I've seen the trends over the past 2 years, and it was in November and December that I actually started tallying the numbers. I didn't want to jump the gun and look at the
Right.
tallies too soon because I thought I was going to corrupt things. And but I've basically known about it since around Halloween or Thanksgiving, and that's when I said, "Oh my gosh." There's a place out in Arizona called the Windbridge Institute. They do a lot of psychic research, and they just I think it was in December, they put out in one of their newsletters that they're finding a trend of psychic activity with autoimmune diseases. But it was a one sentence thing, and I've contacted them, and they're not releasing any more information at this time, and I just think this is way, way too significant to just ignore.
Well, it's
I
too
think probably,
important to just hide under a bushel.
isn't it? Isn't it? I have to agree completely. I think this is just really the whole autoimmune disease to begin with. I think is so sad. In the Netherlands, they do a lot more research in autoimmune diseases, and they're not backing down from it. But I haven't found anywhere in the Netherlands where they're doing research to correlate autoimmune disease with gifted activity. And I would really like to see a couple of the facilities up there really get into it. And I talked to a few docs up there that said, "Wow, this is interesting. We'll have to look into it." But the reality is, my Social Security funds Project Psi.
Right.
Most research facilities, if they can't get a government grant that's going to pay them a lot of bucks, and there's very, very few dollars designated for psychic research. It's just not on anyone's radar. It's a big part of why Stargate shut down.
Yes.
And by the way, when Stargate shut down in the 90s after 23 years of being operational, Congress pulled the funding for it. And one of the things Congress, the remote viewers then, they wanted to know, why did Congress really shut it down? Congress claimed it was their success rate, but that was bogus. And when even the Soviets, they remote viewed Congress to see, why did Congress pull the plug on Stargate? And the reality was, so many congressmen were afraid that the remote viewers were going to see how corrupt Congress is.
Well, you don't
Isn't
need the
that
remote view
interesting?
to see that. All you have to do is watch their lips move.
There you go. Bingo.
Oh,
But
well, we are
the
about,
core.
wait, we're about to go to break. And
Okay, I'm sorry.
we have another question that's come up, and I am so fascinated by this. But this is going to be a 3-minute break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. You're going to love this next segment.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Son of a...
Hey, son.
Mother...
Son? What are you doing?
Hey, Mom. I'm getting ready to listen to Periscope Uncensored.
By expanding your vocabulary.
Well, it is uncensored.
Son, the uncensored part of Periscope Uncensored is Jax and I getting down to brass tacks with all aspects of the paranormal. There's no fluff on our show.
So, no off-color commentary?
I didn't say that.
Awesome!
Son?
I just hit my head.
Oh boy, I'll go get you an ice pack. Catch Periscope Uncensored Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
When you come on to me, you feel like the sun. Watching through my senses, you're the only one. When you do that to me, you feel like the sun. And I just want to know you're the only one. When you come on to me, it feels like the sun. I just want to know you're the only one.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Hello there. Welcome back to Paranormal Experienced Radio. I am Kat Hobson, your host, with my fantastic guest, Dr. Chuck Kennedy, who has just completely blown my mind and a whole lot of other stuff with all of this information that he is sharing. I am just fascinated. We have questions for you in chat. And
Okay.
Frank, who is also a researcher, says, have you seen any trends in your research related to genetic markers or heredity?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it runs down the female side. Female psychics, something like, I think it was 72% of female psychics had their mother was psychic, their grandmother was psychic. Some of the male psychics do have a brother or a grandfather or an uncle that was psychic. So it does run down through family lines, and it generally doesn't cross over genders. If your grandfather was psychic, your sister probably isn't. And
Right.
But if your grandmother was psychic, your sister's psychic, and where the hell did you get it? And so it does tend to follow in that respect, which also goes along with the whole autoimmune situation, since autoimmune is primarily a female disorder. And so we haven't looked at it much deeper than that. To be honest, I had the trends in the book. I've got all the breakdown of family lines, but I also looked at education. What percent are high school dropouts? What percent have junior college? What percent have advanced degrees and so forth? That wasn't as significant as when I did IQ studies on psychics. Did not find a single psychic that had below average IQ. Most were above average IQ, and in a couple of cases were genius level. But I looked at that. I looked at the birth order. Generally speaking, the youngest child has the most gifts. Usually the oldest child or only children usually aren't gifted. I also looked at, because the skeptics claim that there's a brain disorder going on, and you're not higher evolved, you're brain damaged, is what they essentially are saying. So I looked at how many psychics lived with a cat at one point in their life, because 67% of the population have the antibodies to toxoplasmosis. And the thing is, cats have toxoplasmosis. It's in their poop. They walk through their litter box, walk on your couch, walk on your bed, and people pick up the toxoplasmosis. Now, if your immune system is solid, you'll just develop antibodies to toxoplasmosis and it won't bother you. If the toxoplasmosis actually attacks your body, it's a brain-eating parasite. I didn't want somebody to come along and go, oh, these gifted people are brain damaged because they lived with cats, or they lived with birds that had psittacosis. So I looked at things that would affect the brain in that respect. Looked at over-the-counter medications, prescription medications. They're psychotic and they're delusional because they're on a medication. Well, what medication causes hallucinations? The reality is the number one medication that causes hallucinations is not a narcotic, is not an antipsychotic. The number one drug that causes hallucination is Levaquin that people take when they get an upper respiratory infection. So no, they haven't had any URIs in the last 6 months. They're not having any antibiotics. So no, it's not a hallucination. So I tried to rule out, and in the book I go into it deeper, but I tried to rule out all the things that would cause a discrepancy in the brain that would cause either an audio hallucination, a visual hallucination, or even an olfactory hallucination, which is called a phantosmon. A lot of times, you're on a ghost hunt, you get this horrible smell. And in the post-investigation evaluation, I would always ask, one of the leading causes of phantosms are traumatic brain injuries. Well, you haven't hit your head lately. But do you have an upper respiratory infection that you haven't treated, or a sinus infection? That'll cause a phantosm. They haven't had any infection, so then it's very likely that your phantosm wasn't really a hallucination, an olfactory hallucination. You actually smelled something horrible at that investigation site, and that spirit was trying to get your attention by smelling. And so we looked at a lot of different factors. One of the more interesting ones that I found is personally interviewing psychics and mediums. They talk about, I would say, after you've done a long reading or a back-to-back readings, how do you feel? How do you physically feel? Oh, I'm exhausted. I have a headache. I'm weak. I'm dizzy. Well, that to me as a nurse said that sounds like a combination of dehydration and low blood sugar. So I started testing all of the psychics before we started. I would check their blood sugar. And half hour into the process, I'd do their blood sugar again. On average, the blood sugars dropped 26.3 points in a half hour.
That's significant. Now,
Harvard School of Medicine wanted to see, you got to remember, the brain is 3 pounds. It's 2% of our body weight, but it consumes 30% of our glucose, 30% of our oxygen. Mm-hmm. So that being said, would using your brain really intense lower your blood sugar? Harvard School of Medicine wanted to find out, and they thought, well, the best people to test would be high school students doing their SATs.
Right.
And they took high school students, checked their blood sugar, gave them their SAT test. An hour later, testing them again, they were down 6 points. And that just, Harvard was blown away. That's amazing, 6 points. Oh, hell, a psychic drops 26 points in a half hour. And this was hundreds of times I've got this result. So clearly being psychic, you really, really do drop your blood sugar. The other thing is I would check their pulse oxygenation. Normal is 90%, but I'm testing them, and they're 94, 95%. That's normal. That looks good. Half hour in, they're still 93, 97%. No problem. The difference is at the beginning of the test, their respiratory rate is about 14 to 16. Half hour in, the respiratory rate is 26 to 28. So they are literally sucking wind to keep their oxygen levels where it needs to be. So what happens when you're sucking wind? Well, the reality